"You're testing me," the Mafia boss smirked. She thought he was just a hot traveler. The rain against the plate glass windows of the Harbor Gate Inn was not a gentle patter. It was a relentless, rhythmic assault that had been hammering the coastal city of Northport since the sun went down. Inside the lobby, the fluorescent lights hummed with a low, headache-inducing buzz that seemed to vibrate right behind Mia Carter's eyes. She stared at the computer monitor, watching the cursor blink on the empty reservation screen. It was 2 a.m. Her shift was supposed to end in 4 hours, which would give her exactly 90 minutes to drive home, shower, change, and start her rideshare app for the morning rush to the airport. Mia rubbed her temples, trying to massage away the fatigue that felt like it had settled permanently into her bones. She was 25 years old, but tonight she felt closer to 80. The math of her life was a constant, looping equation in her head. 3 shifts at the hotel plus 30 hours of driving equaled the minimum payment on her brother's medical bills, minus rent, minus gas, minus food. The remainder was usually 0, sometimes less than 0. She looked down at her hands. They were dry from the cheap hotel soap and shaking slightly from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. She used to have dreams, real ones. She had wanted to study interior design, to take ugly, broken spaces and make them beautiful. Now, the only spaces she worried about were the linoleum-floored rooms of this budget hotel and the back seat of her used sedan. A gust of wind rattled the automatic doors, but they did not open. Mia sighed, leaning her elbows on the high laminate counter. She felt a deep, hollow ache in her chest that had nothing to do with exhaustion. It was a hunger, not for food, but for something else, something vibrant. She wanted a life that did not smell like stale lobby coffee and damp carpet. She wanted to feel something other than the crushing weight of responsibility she carried for her mother and her sick younger brother. She wanted a spark, as if the universe had heard her silent plea and decided to answer with a thunderclap. A car door slammed outside. Mia straightened up, smoothing the front of her polyester blazer. She watched as a figure approached the glass doors. They slid open with a mechanical hiss, admitting a gust of cold, wet air and a man who looked like he had just walked out of a high-end fashion magazine editorial that had gone terribly wrong. He was tall. That was the first thing she noticed. He had to duck slightly to clear the frame of the door. He was wearing a suit, charcoal gray and impeccably tailored, but it was soaked through. The fabric clung to broad shoulders and lean muscle. He carried a small, leather weekender bag in one hand, his grip tight on the handle. Water dripped from his dark hair, running down the sharp planes of his face and over a jawline that looked like it had been carved from granite. He stopped in the center of the lobby, ignoring the puddle forming around his expensive leather shoes, and scanned the room. It was not a casual look. It was a tactical sweep. Mia held her breath. She had seen thousands of travelers pass through these doors. Tired families, cranky businessmen, flight crews on layovers. They all looked at the reception desk or the elevators. This man looked at the corners. He looked at the exits. He looked at the security camera mounted above the vending machine. Finally, his gaze landed on her. Mia felt a strange, involuntary shiver race down her spine. It was not fear, exactly. It was awareness. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and focused entirely on her. He walked toward the desk, his movements fluid and silent despite his wet shoes. Up close, he smelled like rain, ozone, and something spicy and expensive, like cedarwood and bergamot. "Good evening," he said. His voice was a low baritone, calm but carrying a weight of authority that made the hairs on Mia's arms stand up. "Do you have any rooms left for tonight?" Mia blinked, forcing herself to remember how to speak. Yes, we do." She cleared her throat, her fingers fumbling for the mouse. "Just for one night?" "One night," he confirmed. "Maybe 2, depending on the weather." He placed a credit card on the counter. It was black metal, heavy and cold. As he did, his cuff pulled back slightly, and Mia caught the glint of a watch that probably cost more than her entire car. But it was his hand that held her attention. His knuckles were scarred. They were faint, white lines crossing the skin over the joints, and the skin itself looked roughened, calloused. They were the hands of a man who worked or fought. They did not match the suit. They did not match the watch. "I need an ID as well," Mia said, her voice sounding breathless to her own ears. He produced a driver's license. The name read Adrian Vale. It sounded elegant, sharp. "Welcome to the Harbor Gate Inn, Mr. Vale," she said, typing his name into the system. Her fingers were clumsy. "I can put you on the 3rd floor. It is quieter up there." "Quiet is good," Adrian said softly. He was watching her hands type. "You work late." "The night shift pays $1.50 more an hour," Mia said, the words slipping out before she could check them. She felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Sorry. Yes, I enjoy the quiet." Adrian's mouth quirked at the corner. It wasn't quite a smile, but it softened the intensity of his face. "Do not apologize for the hustle. I respect it." Before Mia could respond, the automatic doors hissed open again, this time. The peace of the lobby was shattered by loud, boisterous laughter. 3 men stumbled in. They were in business casual attire, ties loosened, faces flushed red with alcohol. They brought the smell of sour beer and aggressive entitlement in with them. They were likely from the convention center down the road, stranded by the storm and looking for trouble. Mia stiffened. She hated this part of the job. She was alone in the lobby. The security guard, old Mr. Henderson, was likely asleep in the break room again. The men approached the counter, ignoring Adrian, who had stepped slightly to the side. "Hey, sweetheart," the leader of the group bellowed. He was a heavy-set man with sweat stains on his collar. He leaned over the counter, invading Mia's personal space. "We need rooms, 3 rooms, and maybe some room service." "You the room service menu?" He leered at her, his eyes dropping to her chest. Mia took a step back, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I can help you with the rooms, sir, but the kitchen is closed until 6 in the morning." "Closed?" one of the other men scoffed, slapping his hand on the counter. "Come on, doll. You can find us something. Maybe you can bring it up yourself." The men laughed, a wet, ugly sound. Mia felt small. She felt the familiar sting of humiliation and fear. She reached for the phone under the desk to call security, but her hand was shaking. "Sir, please lower your voice," Mia said, trying to sound firm. "If you continue to harass me, I will have to ask you to leave." "Ooh, she is feisty," the leader sneered. He reached out, his hand moving toward her arm resting on the counter. "I like feisty." Mia flinched back, bracing herself, but the hand never reached her. "Gentlemen," the single word cut through the air like a knife through silk. It was not loud. In fact, it was spoken more quietly than Mia's own voice, but the tone was so chillingly devoid of emotion, so utterly commanding, that the 3 drunk men froze instantly. Adrian Vale had not moved much. He had simply turned his head. He was standing perfectly still. His hands relaxed at his sides, but the air around him seemed to have dropped 10 degrees. He looked at the leader of the group with an expression of mild, dangerous boredom. "I believe the lady asked you to lower your voices," Adrian said. His eyes were dark voids. "And I believe she told you the kitchen is closed." The leader blinked, his alcohol-addled brain trying to process the threat standing next to him. "Who are you? Mind your own business, pal." Adrian took 1 step forward, just one, but the shift in his posture was terrifying. It was the movement of a coiled snake. "She is checking me in. That makes her my business right now. You are loud, you are rude, and you're making a mistake." He paused, letting the silence stretch until it was suffocating. "Walk away," Adrian said softly. "Go find another hotel, or stay here and find out exactly how bad your night can get." The threat was implicit, hanging heavy in the humid air. The leader looked at Adrian's face, then at his scarred hands. Something in Adrian's eyes, a promise of violence so absolute it did not need to be shouted, sobered the man up instantly. We were just leaving," the leader stammered. He stepped back, bumping into his friend. "Come on, guys, this place is a dump anyway." They scrambled toward the door, tripping over their own feet in their haste to get away from the dark-haired man who stood like a statue in the center of the lobby. The doors hissed shut behind them, leaving the lobby in stunned silence. Mia let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Her knees felt like water. She looked at Adrian, expecting him to be angry or pumped up on adrenaline. Instead, he simply turned back to the counter, his expression calm, as if he had just swatted a fly. "Thank you," Mia breathed. Her voice trembled. "You didn't have to do that." Adrian looked at her. The darkness in his eyes receded, replaced by a warmth that made Mia's breath hitch. He leaned an elbow on the high counter, bringing his face closer to her level. "I do not like bullies," he said simply. He tilted his head, studying her face. "You stood your ground well, though. You are too brave for a front desk job. Mia." He used her name. It sounded different when he said it, not like a name tag, but like a secret. Mia felt a flush rise from her neck to her cheeks. She felt exposed, yet strangely safe. "I was terrified," she admitted, surprised by her own honesty. "Bravery is not the absence of fear," Adrian murmured, his eyes locking onto hers. "It is acting in spite of it." The air between them suddenly felt thick, charged with an electricity that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Mia felt drawn to him, pulled into his orbit by a gravity she could not explain. He was a stranger. He was dangerous. She had seen that clearly when he confronted the men. But looking at him now, seeing the way his wet hair curled slightly at his collar, the way his lashes framed those intense eyes, she felt a jolt of attraction so strong it made her dizzy. I have your room key," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She picked up the plastic key card and slid it across the marble counter. At the same moment, he reached for it. Their fingers brushed. Mia gasped softly. A literal spark of static snapped between them, followed by a rush of heat that traveled up her arm and settled low in her stomach. It was electric, immediate. She looked up, startled, and found him staring at her. He had not pulled his hand away. His fingertips were rough, warm against her cold skin. He was looking at her with a new intensity now, his gaze dropping from her eyes to her lips, lingering there for a heartbeat that lasted an eternity, before dragging back up to meet her stare. He smirked. It was a slow, knowing expression that made her knees weak. "Careful," he said, his voice dropping an octave, turning rough like velvet over gravel. Mia swallowed hard. "Careful of what?" He leaned in closer. The smell of rain and spice filled her senses. He was so close she could see the flecks of gold in his dark irises. "You are testing me," he said. The words hung in the air, playful yet heavy with meaning. Mia laughed nervously, a breathless sound. She thought he was flirting. She thought he was just a hot, mysterious traveler playing a game with the bored hotel clerk to pass the time. "I'm just doing my job, Mr. Vale," she managed to say, trying to regain some semblance of professionalism, though her heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Is that what this is?" He picked up the key card, his fingers sliding slowly off the counter, breaking the contact. The loss of his touch left her skin tingling. He held her gaze for one more second, a silent challenge passing between them, before he straightened up and grabbed the handle of his bag. "Room 314, he said. "Good night, Mia." "Good night," she whispered. She watched him walk toward the elevators. He moved with a predator's grace, smooth and efficient. When the elevator doors slid open, he stepped inside and turned around. He did not look at his phone. He did not look at the buttons. He looked straight at her across the lobby, holding her gaze until the metal doors slid shut, cutting off the connection. Mia let out a long, shaky exhale and slumped against the back counter. Her face was burning. Her heart was racing. She raised a hand to touch her cheek, which felt hot to the touch. What just happened? She replayed the encounter in her mind, the way he had shut down the drunks with a whisper, the way his hand felt against hers, the way he had said, "You are testing me," as if she were a riddle he was trying to solve. A fizzy warmth spread through her chest, pushing back the exhaustion and the gloom of the rainy night. For the first time in months, she did not feel just tired. She felt alive. She felt seen. She turned back to the computer, a small smile playing on her lips. unaware of the world outside the glass doors, outside. The rain continued to pour, washing the grime of the city into the gutters. Across the street, parked in the shadows of a closed diner, a black sedan sat idling. Its headlights were off. The engine purred with a low, menacing rumble. Inside the car, a man in a dark jacket watched the entrance of the Harbor Gate Inn. He picked up a radio from the passenger seat. "Target is inside," he said, his voice flat. "He's checking in now. Watch the third-floor windows." Mia Carter typed a command into the keyboard, humming a soft tune, completely unaware that the man who had just sparked a fire in her blood had also brought the wolves to her door. The morning sun hit the scuffed linoleum of the Harbor Gate Inn lobby with a brightness that felt offensive to Mia's tired eyes. She had managed a 3-hour nap in the break room on a cot that smelled of dust and old laundry detergent, a mercy granted by the day manager who knew about her double life. Now, standing behind the counter, she was trying to transition from night shift hotel clerk to day shift rideshare driver, splashing cold water on her face in the staff bathroom and reapplying mascara that refused to hide the dark circles under her eyes. She was just about to log out of the computer system when the elevator dinged. Mia glanced up, expecting the usual morning exodus of flight crews dragging roller bags, but her breath hitched in her throat. It was him. Adrian Vale stepped out of the elevator, and if he had looked intimidating the night before in his dark, rain-soaked suit, he looked devastating now. He had shed the armor of the expensive tailoring. He was wearing a fitted black t-shirt that clung to his chest and arms, outlining muscles that looked carved from stone, and a pair of dark denim jeans that sat low on his hips. He looked fresh, rested, and impossibly clean, like a model from a travel magazine who had just touched down in an exotic location. He walked straight to the desk, that same fluid, predatory grace in his stride, but his expression was lighter today. The darkness she had seen in his eyes when he confronted the drunks was gone, replaced by a casual, almost boyish charm. "Good morning, Mia," he said. His voice was still that low, rumbling baritone that seemed to vibrate in her chest. "Mr. Vale," Mia said, her hands instinctively smoothing her hair. "I hope the room was okay. It can get noisy near the ice machine." "The room was fine," Adrian said, resting his forearms on the counter. He looked at her, really looked at her, in a way that made Mia feel like the only person in the room. "But I have a situation." Mia's stomach dropped. "Oh no, did housekeeping miss something? The water pressure?" "No." Adrian chuckled, a rich, warm sound. "The situation is that I have a connecting flight that does not leave until tomorrow morning. I have an entire day to kill in Northport, and I have absolutely no idea where to go." He drummed his fingers on the countertop. "I need a guide, someone who knows the city, someone who knows where to get coffee that does not taste like battery acid." Mia laughed, a genuine sound that surprised her. "Well, that rules out the coffee here in the lobby." "Exactly," Adrian said, his lips curving into a smile. "I was hoping you might be available. I recall you mentioned working 2 jobs. If you are free, I would like to hire you for the day, to show me around." Mia hesitated, the logical part of her brain, the part that balanced her checkbook and counted pennies for her brother's medication, screamed that this was a bad idea. He was a stranger, a handsome, intense stranger who had walked in out of the rain like a noir hero, but a stranger nonetheless. "I actually have to start my rideshare shift," Mia said, looking down at the keyboard. "I cannot really take the day off." "I will pay for your time," Adrian cut in smoothly. "Whatever you would make in a full day of driving, I will double it. Consider it a private booking. All I need is a tour of the waterfront, maybe some lunch, and good conversation." Mia looked up at him. Double her daily earnings. That was 2 weeks of groceries. That was a significant chunk of the specialist co-pay for Leo. She looked into Adrian's eyes, searching for any sign of deception, but found only open, inviting warmth. "Okay," Mia said, the words slipping out before she could overthink it. "But I drive a 5-year-old sedan, not a limo." "I prefer sedans," Adrian said, his eyes twinkling. "They blend in better." The rain had cleared, leaving the coastal city of Northport scrubbed clean and glistening under a pale blue sky. Mia drove them toward the waterfront, conscious of the large man sitting in her passenger seat. His presence filled the small car. He smelled of soap and that lingering, spicy cologne, overpowering the scent of her vanilla air freshener. They started at a small cafe on the edge of the historic district, a place with mismatched wooden chairs and windows that looked out over the gray Atlantic. Adrian insisted on paying, handing the barista a bill large enough to cover everyone in the line behind them, waving away the change. As they walked along the wooden planks of the pier, clutching steaming paper cups, the initial awkwardness began to melt away. The wind whipped off the water, cold and salty, tangling Mia's hair. "So," Adrian said, taking a sip of his black coffee, "tell me about this bravery of yours. You work 2 jobs, you stare down drunks. What are you fighting for, Mia?" It was a direct question, disarming in its simplicity. Mia usually kept her life compartmentalized, locked away in boxes labeled work and stress. But something about Adrian's steady gaze made the locks click open. "My brother," Mia said, looking out at the bobbing fishing boats. "Leo. He's 19. He has a condition. An autoimmune disorder. It is complicated, and the treatments are expensive. Our insurance covers some of it, but not the specialists he actually needs." Adrian stopped walking. He turned to face her, his expression serious. "You support him?" "Me and my mom." Mia nodded. "But Mom works in a diner, and her back is bad, so I do what I can. My dad, well, he decided the medical bills and the stress were too much for him about 5 years ago. He went out for cigarettes and ended up in Arizona with a new girlfriend." She tried to say it lightly, to make it a joke, but the bitterness was there, sharp and acidic. "Cowardice," Adrian said. The word was hard, flat. A man who leaves his family when things get difficult is not a man. Mia looked at him, surprised by the venom in his voice. "Yeah. Well, we make it work." "You should not have to carry that alone," Adrian said softly. He reached out, his hand hovering for a second before he gently touched her elbow to guide her around a group of tourists. "You mentioned you like the quiet of the 3rd floor. What do you do when you're not working yourself to death?" "I draw," Mia admitted, feeling a flush of shyness. "Or I used to. I wanted to be an interior designer. I look at places like this." She gestured to the old, weathered buildings lining the waterfront. "And I imagine how to fix them, how to open them up, let the light in, make them flow better. I like the idea of taking something broken and making it beautiful again." Adrian studied the buildings, then looked back at her. "There is value in that, great value. Restoring order to chaos. What about you?" Mia asked, feeling like she had talked too much. "You checked in with a bag the size of a shoebox. You said you have a connecting flight. What do you do that has you traveling so light?" Adrian took a slow sip of his coffee. His eyes shifted slightly, scanning the crowd on the pier, a habit Mia was starting to notice. He was always watching. "I am in logistics, of a sort," Adrian said vaguely. "I fix problems for people, companies mostly, when things get stuck, or when negotiations break down. They send me in to smooth things over." "Like a consultant?" Mia asked. "Something like that," Adrian said. "It keeps me on the road. It keeps me busy." "It sounds lonely," Mia said without thinking. Adrian paused. He looked at her, his dark eyes softening in a way that made Mia's heart stutter. "It can be," he said quietly. "Until recently." The comment hung in the air between them, charged and heavy. Mia felt a blush rising on her cheeks. She turned away, pretending to watch a ferry boat departing for the islands, but she could feel his eyes on her profile. They spent the afternoon wandering the city like tourists. They took the old electric tram that rattled up the steep streets of downtown. The car was crowded, packed with commuters and shoppers. When the tram lurched around a sharp corner, Mia stumbled, and Adrian's arm shot out instantly, wrapping around her waist to steady her. His grip was firm, his hand large and warm through the fabric of her thin jacket. He pulled her back against him to make room for a woman with a stroller, and suddenly they were pressed together, her back against his chest. Mia could feel the solid wall of his muscle, the steady thrum of his heartbeat. She smelled the clean scent of his skin. She looked up, and he was looking down at her, his chin almost resting on the top of her head. He did not let go even after the tram straightened out. His hand stayed on the small of her back, his thumb tracing a slow, absent-minded circle that sent shivers racing down her spine. "You okay?" he murmured, his breath stirring the hair near her ear. "I am fine," Mia breathed, though she felt anything but fine. She felt electric. They got off at the highest point in the city, a stone overlook that offered a panoramic view of the harbor, the gray ocean, and the sprawling city grid below. It was late afternoon now, the sun beginning to dip, casting long, golden shadows across the pavement. It was quiet up here, far away from the noise of the traffic. They leaned against the stone railing, shoulder to shoulder. "It is beautiful," Mia said, looking out at the horizon. "Even with all the gray has its own kind of beauty," Adrian said. He turned to face her, leaning his hip against the stone wall. "But I prefer the view right here." Mia looked at him, her pulse quickening. He was not looking at the ocean. He was looking at her lips. The playful banter of the morning had evaporated, replaced by a thick, heavy tension that felt like the air before a storm. Adrian reached out, his hand moving slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she did not, he tucked a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered there, trailing down the line of her jaw, his skin rough and warm against hers. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She leaned into his touch instinctively, her eyes fluttering closed. "Mia," he whispered. It sounded like a question and a plea all at once. He leaned in. Mia tilted her chin up, her lips parting slightly. She could feel his warmth radiating toward her, could feel his breath ghosting over her mouth. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She wanted this. She wanted the danger and the safety of him all at once. His head tilted, his mouth inches from hers. Brr, ring, brr, ring. The sharp, jarring sound of a cell phone shattered the moment like glass. Adrian froze. For a second, he looked like he was going to ignore it, his eyes squeezed shut in frustration. But the ringing persisted, demanding and harsh. He pulled back, the loss of his warmth hitting Mia like a physical blow. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black phone. He glanced at the screen, and Mia saw his entire demeanor change instantly. The softness vanished. His jaw tightened, the muscles bunching, his eyes, which had been warm and inviting, turned cold and hard, like flint. "I have to take this," he said. His voice was no longer the traveler's voice. It was the commander's voice she had heard in the lobby. He stepped away from her, walking toward the edge of the overlook. Mia stood there, wrapping her arms around herself, feeling foolish and cold. She tried not to listen, but the wind carried his voice back to her. "I told you the shipment needs to be clear," Adrian hissed into the phone. His tone was clipped, lethal. "No, I do not care about the delay. If they push back, you push harder. Handle it, no mistakes. I am not coming back to clean up a mess you should have prevented." Shipment, push back. A flicker of unease curled in Mia's stomach. It sounded aggressive. It sounded like the kind of conversation people had in movies before something exploded. He is a consultant, she told herself firmly. He fixes problems. Corporate logistics are stressful. High stakes, that is all. She watched his back, the way his shoulders were set, the tension radiating off him. It frightened her a little. Adrian ended the call and stood still for a moment, taking a deep breath. He ran a hand through his hair, then turned back to her. As he walked closer, Mia watched the mask slide back into place, the hardness smoothed out, the smile returning, though it didn't quite reach his eyes this time. "Sorry," he said, pocketing the phone. "Work. There is always a crisis." "Everything okay?" Mia asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Just a logistical headache," Adrian said dismissively. "Nothing I cannot handle, but I apologize for ruining the moment." "You did not ruin it," Mia lied softly. "Come on," Adrian said, reaching for her hand. "Let me walk you back. It looks like the rain is returning." They took the tram back down to the city center and walked toward the hotel. The sky had turned a bruised purple, and heavy drops of rain began to splatter against the pavement, darkening the concrete. By the time they reached the street near the Harbor Gate Inn, the skies opened up. They ran the last block, laughing as they dodged puddles. Adrian pulled her under the narrow canvas awning of a closed flower shop, just down the street from the hotel entrance. The space was tiny. They were forced together, chest to chest, to escape the deluge. The rain hammered against the canvas above them, creating a curtain of water that separated them from the rest of the world. Mia was breathless, her hair damp, water droplets clinging to her eyelashes. She looked up at Adrian. He was breathing hard, too, raindrops glistening on his forehead and caught in his dark lashes. He was not smiling now. He was studying her face with an intensity that made her knees weak. He looked at her forehead, her eyes, her nose, her mouth. He looked at her as if he were trying to memorize her, cataloging every freckle and curve. "Mia," he said, his voice rough. He placed his hands on her waist, his thumbs pressing into the fabric of her shirt. The heat of his palms seemed to burn through to her skin. "I had a plan," Adrian said, his voice low, almost talking to himself. "I was supposed to be in and out, one night, connecting flight. And now?" Mia whispered. Adrian looked deep into her eyes, and Mia saw a conflict there she did not understand, a war between duty and desire. "Now," Adrian said, stepping closer until there was no air left between them. "I think I'm going to be staying in town a little longer than planned." Mia's heart soared, a mix of triumph and terror. "Is that so?" "Yeah," Adrian breathed. He raised one hand, his knuckles brushing her cheek, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "I think there is something here I need to explore, something I cannot just walk away from." He didn't kiss her. He just held her there in the rain shadow, his body a shield against the storm, his promise hanging in the damp air. And as Mia looked up at him, dazzled by the chemistry and the hope of something beautiful, she pushed down the memory of the cold voice on the phone and the talk of shipments. She chose to believe in the traveler who looked at her like she was the only destination that mattered. She did not see the black SUV roll slowly past the flower shop, the passenger window cracked open just an inch, a camera lens zooming in on Adrian's face before disappearing into the rainy night. The automatic doors of the Harbor Gate Inn slid open with a weary hiss, admitting the damp, salt-heavy air of the Northport night. Mia Carter sat behind the front desk, her eyes gritty with exhaustion. It had been 4 days since the storm. 4 days since Adrian Vale had walked into her lobby and effectively rewired her nervous system. Her life had technically returned to its punishing rhythm. She clocked out at 6 in the morning, slept for 4 hours, drove her sedan for the rideshare app until her lower back screamed in protest, and then returned to the hotel to do it all over again. The medical bills for her brother Leo sat in a terrifying stack on her kitchen counter, a physical monument to her stress. But something had shifted. The gray fog of her daily grind was now punctuated by technicolor bursts of adrenaline every time she saw him. Adrian had not checked out. In fact, he kept extending his stay, paying in cash, day by day. Every evening when she came on shift, he would find a reason to stop by the desk. Sometimes he brought her a coffee that tasted like actual roasted beans instead of burnt mud. Sometimes he just leaned against the counter, asking about her day with that intense focus that made her feel like the most fascinating person on earth. "You look tired, Mia," he had said the night before, his eyes tracing the shadows under hers. "I am just working," she had replied, trying to smooth her hair. "The usual." "You work too hard," he had murmured, his voice low. "One day, I'm going to take you somewhere where the only thing you have to do is decide which cocktail to order." The memory of his voice sent a flush of heat through her chest, warring with the air conditioning. She checked the clock. 2 in the morning. Her hotel shift was over, but she had turned on her driver app. Leo needed a new prescription, and her bank account was hovering dangerously close to zero. She walked out to her car, the humidity clinging to her skin. She settled into the driver's seat of her aging sedan, the leather cracked and smelling of vanilla air freshener. She toggled her status to available. Almost immediately, the app pinged, passenger A, V, pickup, 4th and Main. Mia frowned. That was downtown, near the financial district. It was late for a pickup there. She accepted the ride and put the car in gear, navigating the quiet streets. When she pulled up to the curb, a figure stepped out of the shadows of a closed bank building. Even in the dim streetlight, she recognized the silhouette instantly. Broad shoulders, the confident set of his head, the predatory grace of his movement. It was Adrian. He opened the back door and slid in, bringing the scent of night air and that spicy, expensive cologne with him. "Mia," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. A slow smile spread across his face, visible in the rearview mirror. "Of all the drivers in Northport, are you stalking me? Mr. Vale?" Mia teased, her heart doing a traitorous double beat against her ribs. She pulled away from the curb. "I think fate is just trying to tell us something," he replied, his eyes meeting hers in the reflection. "I was just finishing up some business, heading back to the hotel." "Business at 2 a.m, Mia asked. "International markets," Adrian said smoothly. "They do not sleep, so neither do I." Mia turned onto the main avenue, heading toward the highway that led to the airport. The streetlights flickered rhythmically overhead, casting intermittent bars of light across the back seat. "You are working late again," Adrian observed, his tone shifting from playful to serious. "You're going to burn out, Mia?" "I'm fine," Mia said, gripping the steering wheel. "I have goals. Goals require capital. There are easier ways to get capital," Adrian murmured. Mia was about to retort when she saw Adrian's expression change in the mirror. He was looking out the rear window, his body suddenly tense. The relaxed passenger was gone. The alert, dangerous man from the lobby had returned. "Mia," he said, his voice calm but tight. "Is that SUV behind us?" Mia glanced at her side mirror. A large black vehicle with tinted windows was following about 3 car lengths back. It had no front license plate. "I think so," she said, frowning. "It has been there since the last light." "Turn right up here," Adrian commanded. "Do not signal." "What? That is a dead end," Mia said, confused. "It is not," Adrian said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "It cuts through to the old garment district. Turn, now." Mia's instinct screamed at her to ask questions, but something in Adrian's tone made her obey. She yanked the wheel to the right, tires squealing slightly as they shot down the narrow side street. The SUV followed, its engine roaring as it accelerated. "They are following us," Mia said, panic spiking in her chest. "Adrian, who is that?" "Aggressive drivers," Adrian said, lying through his teeth. "Probably drunk. Keep going. Take the next left into the alleyway. It is tight, but you will fit." "The alley," Mia cried. "I cannot drive down an alley." "Trust me," Adrian said. He leaned forward, his hand gripping the back of her seat. "Trust me." Mia left. She swung the car left, plunging into a narrow, trash-strewn alleyway between 2 brick warehouses. It was a shortcut she had not even known existed, despite living in Northport her entire life. Adrian directed her with terrifying precision, right at the dumpster, sharp left onto the cobblestones, straight through the loading zone. He knew the layout of this city better than any tourist. He knew it better than the GPS. They burst out onto a parallel avenue, 4 blocks away from where they had started. Adrian looked back. The SUV was nowhere to be seen. He let out a breath, his shoulders relaxing. "Okay, slow down. We lost them." Mia's hands were shaking on the wheel. She pulled the car over to the curb and put it in park, her chest heaving. "What was that? How did you know those streets? You said you were a traveler." Adrian paused. He looked at her in the mirror, his expression unreadable for a moment before he softened it into a reassuring smile. "I told you, Mia. I am in logistics. I study maps. It is a habit. And that car... Road rage is a problem in every city. It felt like they were chasing us," Mia whispered. They were just looking for trouble, Adrian said firmly, and we avoided it. You are a good driver. He reached forward and gently touched her shoulder. The contact grounded her, stopping the tremors in her hands. I'm sorry I scared you, he said softly. Let me make it up to you. You look like you need a drink, a real one. I'm on the clock, Mia said weakly. Not anymore, Adrian said. I'm canceling the ride. Come on, I know a place just around the corner. It is safe, I promise. Against her better judgment, against the warning bells ringing in her head about his knowledge of escape routes and side streets, Mia nodded. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to be near him. The place was called the Velvet Room, a small jazz bar tucked into the basement of an old industrial building. It was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of bourbon and old wood. A saxophone player was pouring a mournful melody into the room from a small stage in the corner. Adrian led her to a booth in the back, shadowed and private. He ordered them 2 old fashions without looking at the menu. When the drinks arrived, the amber liquid glowing in the candlelight, the tension of the car chase began to ebb. Replaced by a different kind of intensity, they sat close. The booth was small, and Adrian's knee brushed against hers under the table. He did not pull away, neither did she. You have a lot of secrets, Adrian Vale, Mia said, tracing the rim of her glass with her finger. She looked up at him through her lashes. Everyone has secrets, Adrian replied. The candlelight danced in his dark eyes, making them look bottomless. You have secrets too. You secretly want to run away from everything you are responsible for. Mia felt exposed, but not judged. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who looks for it, Adrian said. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. His palm was warm, his grip protective. You carry the weight of the world, Mia. You deserve to set it down for a while. And you? Mia asked, her voice barely a whisper. What do you carry? Adrian's thumb brushed over her knuckles. Expectations and the consequences of other people's mistakes. The cryptic answer sent a thrill through her. They were suspended in a bubble of intimacy, the music wrapping around them like smoke. Mia felt a magnetic pull toward him, a physical need to bridge the small distance across the table. Suddenly, a shadow fell over their booth. Mia looked up to see a woman standing there. She was striking, with severe, sharp features and hair pulled back into a tight knot. She wore a leather jacket that looked expensive but utilitarian. She did not look like a waitress. She looked like a soldier. Sir, the woman said. She did not look at Mia. Her eyes were locked on Adrian. Adrian's expression hardened instantly. He did not let go of Mia's hand, but his grip tightened. Not now, Elena. It is the docks, the woman said, her voice low and urgent. Tonight, the shipment has been flagged. Rico is asking for instructions. Mia froze. The shipment. Rico. It sounded like a movie script or a police report. Adrian's jaw clenched, a muscle feathered in his cheek. For a split second, he looked ready to stand up and leave, to become the commander again. But then he looked at Mia. He saw the confusion and the fear starting to dawn in her eyes. Tell Rico to handle it, Adrian said coldly, his voice possessing a lethal finality. I am occupied. But sir, the woman started. I said, Adrian interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I am occupied. He turned his head, finally acknowledging Mia's presence in the conversation. He gestured to her with his free hand. Elena, Adrian said, staring the woman down. This is Mia. She is someone important to me. You will not interrupt us again. The woman? Elena looked at Mia then. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise breaking her stoic mask. She looked from Mia to Adrian, processing the claim. Someone important. Understood, Elena said stiffly. She nodded once, turned on her heel, and disappeared into the gloom of the bar. Mia sat in stunned silence. Her heart was stuttering in her chest. Someone important to me. The words echoed in her ears, drowning out the warning sirens about shipments and docks. Who was that? Mia asked, her voice trembling. An associate, Adrian said. He turned his attention back to her, the hardness melting away as if it had never been there. He squeezed her hand. She worries too much about business. Ignore her. She called you, sir, Mia pointed out. I told you. Adrian smirked, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. I fix problems. People respect that. He finished his drink in one swallow and stood up, extending his hand to her. Come on, let us get some fresh air. It is too crowded in here. Outside, the street was deserted. The earlier rain had left the pavement slick and black, reflecting the streetlights like spilled oil. The air was cool, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the bar. They walked in silence for a block, the tension between them ratcheting up with every step. They stopped under the yellow glow of a street lamp. Adrian turned to her. He stepped close, crowding her space, blocking out the rest of the world. He was so tall, so solid. Mia had to crane her neck to look up at him. Mia, he said. Her name sounded like a prayer on his lips. Adrian, she whispered. He reached out, his hand cupping her face. His skin was rough, the calluses scraping gently against her jawline. It was a worker's hand, a fighter's hand, holding her as if she were made of spun glass. He tilted her chin up, searching her eyes. He looked for hesitation, for fear, finding none. Only a raw, open longing. His gaze dropped to her mouth. I should not do this, he murmured, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. But I cannot stop myself. He closed the distance. The kiss was slow, devastatingly deep. It was not the tentative peck of a first date. It was a claiming. Mia gasped as his lips met hers, soft but demanding. She felt the roughness of his hand at her jaw, anchoring her to him. His other hand slid down to her waist, pulling her forward until there was no space left between them. Mia's hands found their way to his chest, her fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. She could feel the solid wall of muscle beneath and the thud, thud, thud of his heart beating as fast as hers. The world narrowed down to the heat of his mouth, the scent of spice and bourbon, and the overwhelming feeling of being possessed. The kiss grew more urgent. Adrian groaned low in his throat, a vibration she felt in her own bones. He pressed her closer, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin behind her ear. Mia felt dizzy, drunk on him. She opened to him, inviting him in, her pulse racing so fast she thought she might faint. It was dangerous. It was wrong. It was the most right thing she had ever felt. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. Adrian rested his forehead against hers, his eyes dark, the pupils blown wide with unspoken desire. Mia, he breathed, his voice ragged. Wow, Mia whispered, her lips swollen and tingling. Adrian let out a short, rough laugh. He pulled back slightly, looking at her with a fierce possessiveness. Come on, I will walk you to your car. You need to go home, before I do something reckless like keep you forever. They began to walk back toward where they had parked, their hands clasped tight. Mia felt floaty, disconnected from reality. She was in a romance novel. She was in a dream. Then the nightmare crashed in. A car screeched around the corner ahead of them. Tires smoked against the asphalt. It was a sedan, windows down. Mia barely had time to register the glint of metal barrel sticking out the window before Adrian moved. Down, he roared. He did not grab her hand, he grabbed her waist, tackling her with the force of a linebacker. He threw her behind a parked delivery van, his body covering hers completely as they hit the wet pavement. Crack, 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 crack. The sound was deafening. Gunshots, real gunshots. Glass shattered above them as the windows of the van exploded, raining safety glass down onto Adrian's back. Bullets pinged against the metal of the chassis, sparking in the dark. Mia screamed, but the sound was smothered by Adrian's chest. He was a heavy, solid weight on top of her, shielding every inch of her body with his own. He was not shaking. He was tense, rigid, waiting. The car tires squealed again as the vehicle sped off down the street, the engine noise fading into the distance. Adrian was up instantly. He moved with alarming precision, grabbing Mia by the arm and hauling her to her feet. Move, he commanded. His voice was not the lover's voice. It was cold, hard, and terrifying. Into the alley, now! He hustled her into the shadows between buildings, checking the corners like a soldier clearing a room. He pushed her into a recessed doorway. his body blocking the exit. Mia was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She stared at him, wide-eyed. There was a small cut on his cheek from the glass, bleeding sluggishly. He looked lethal. "They shot at us," Mia gasped, the reality crashing down on her. "Adrian, they shot at us!" "They shot at me," Adrian corrected grimly. He was scanning the street, his eyes moving constantly. Mia grabbed his lapels, bunching the fabric in her fists. Who shoots at a consultant? Who are you?" Adrian looked down at her. The adrenaline was still coursing through him, stripping away the charm, the mask, the lie. He looked at her terror, and he knew he could not spin this. Not anymore. "I am not just a traveler. Mia," he said. His voice was bleak. "Tell me," she demanded, tears welling in her eyes. "Tell me the truth." "I cannot tell you everything," Adrian said, his voice straining with the effort to keep her safe. "Not yet. But you cannot go home tonight, and you cannot go back to the harbor gate." "Why?" Mia sobbed. "Because they saw you with me," Adrian said. He reached out, wiping a tear from her cheek with a thumb that now had a smear of blood on it. "And that puts a target on your back." "You're scaring me," Mia whispered. "Good," Adrian said intensely. "Fear keeps you alive." He pulled out his phone, dialing a number with rapid movements. "I need an extraction," he said into the phone. "And a safe suite. The plaza, penthouse level, now." He hung up and looked at her. "You are coming with me to a different hotel where it is safe." "I want to go home to my brother," Mia cried. "You lead them to your brother, and you kill him," Adrian said. The words were brutal, a slap in the face. Mia flinched. Adrian's expression softened, shattering into regret. He grabbed her face in his hands again, desperate. "I'm sorry. Mia, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to drag you into this. But you are in it now, and I am the only one who can keep you safe." Mia looked at him, the man who had kissed her with such tenderness moments ago, now standing amidst shattered glass and gunpowder smoke, commanding an army on his phone. The hot traveler was gone. The boss had arrived, and she was standing right in the crossfire. The sunlight streaming into the penthouse suite of the Grand Plaza Hotel was nothing like the harsh, fluorescent glare of the Harbor Gate Inn. Here, the light filtered through sheer, cream-colored drapes, casting a soft, golden glow over furniture that cost more than Mia earned in a year. Mia sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, her hands gripping the Egyptian cotton sheets until her knuckles turned white. She was safe. That was what Adrian had told her. He had checked her in under the name Elena Bennett, handed her a key card that felt heavier than it looked, and promised he would return by noon. But the luxury felt like a cage. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the terrifying crack of gunfire. She felt the weight of Adrian's body pressing her into the wet pavement, shielding her from bullets meant for him. She stood up and paced the room, her footsteps silent on the plush carpet. A room service tray sat untouched on the mahogany dining table, the coffee long since cold. She felt like an imposter in this world of high ceilings and silence. She was Mia Carter, a girl who clipped coupons and worried about transmission repairs. She did not belong in a suite on the 45th floor. Hiding from assassins. Assassins. The word tasted like copper in her mouth, needing to escape the suffocating quiet. Mia grabbed her purse and headed for the door. She needed fresh air. She needed to feel the ground under her feet and remind herself that the real world still existed outside this golden tower. She took the elevator down, keeping her head low, flinching when the doors chimed. The lobby was a cavern of marble and chandeliers. She walked quickly, pushing through the revolving doors and out onto the busy sidewalk. The noise of the city hit her. Traffic, sirens, the chatter of pedestrians. It was grounding. She took a deep breath, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself against the morning chill. "Miss Carter." The voice was not loud, but it stopped her dead in her tracks. It was flat, professional, and devoid of warmth. Mia turned. A man was standing near a concrete planter, watching her. He was average height, wearing a gray suit that looked government issue, ill-fitting and nondescript. He had a receding hairline and eyes that looked like they had seen everything and found none of it impressive. "I think you have the wrong person," Mia said, her voice trembling slightly. "My name is—" "Elena Bennett is the name on the registry," the man interrupted smoothly. He stepped closer, not aggressively, but with a casual authority that boxed her in. "But your name is Mia Carter. You live on 4th Street. You work at the Harbor Gate Inn. And you are currently harboring a fugitive." Mia's heart hammered against her ribs. She took a step back. "Who are you?" The man reached into his jacket pocket. Mia flinched, expecting a weapon, but he produced a leather wallet and flipped it open. A silver badge glinted in the sunlight. "Agent Ross, Federal Bureau of Investigation," he said. He snapped the wallet shut. "We need to talk, Mia." "I have nothing to say to you," Mia said, looking around for an escape route. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Haven't you?" Ross asked. He pulled a manila envelope from under his arm and extracted several glossy photographs. He held them up for her to see. The first photo showed Adrian standing on a rainy dock, surrounded by men with tattoos and guns. He looked brutal, his face twisted in a snarl Mia had never seen. The second photo showed him shaking hands with a man Ross identified as a known arms dealer. "Adrian Vale isn't a traveler, Mia," Ross said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial level. "He is the head of the Vale organization. He controls the ports. He controls the unions. He moves things through this city that kill people. Drugs, weapons, dirty money." Mia stared at the photos. The man in the pictures was wearing the same clothes Adrian had worn the first night she met him. The reality of it punched the air out of her lungs. She'd known he was dangerous. The gunshots had proven that. But this was different. This was organized. This was monstrous. He told me he was a consultant," Mia whispered, the defense sounding weak even to her own ears. "And you believed him because he has a nice smile and paid off your credit card bill?" Ross asked. The cruelty in his voice made her flinch. "He is using you. Mia, you are his cover. A civilian girlfriend makes him look legitimate. It makes him look like he is just a tourist." "That is not true," Mia said, though doubt was spreading through her veins like ice water. "Isn't it?" Ross pulled out one last photo. It was grainy, taken from a distance. It showed Mia and Adrian in the alleyway the night before, just after the shooting. Adrian's hand was on her arm. "You were at the scene of a gangland shooting last night. You fled the scene. That makes you an accessory. Mia, I could arrest you right now. I could freeze your accounts. I could make sure your brother never sees another specialist again because you will be in federal prison." The mention of Leo shattered her defenses. "Leave my brother out of this. I can help you," Ross said, his tone shifting to a false benevolence. "I can offer you protection, witness security for you, your mother, and your brother, full medical coverage for his condition, a fresh start, but you have to help us." "How?" Mia asked, her voice barely audible. "We know he is planning a meeting with the rival syndicate to settle the territory dispute," Ross said. "We need to know where and when. He trusts you. He talks to you." Ross reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, silver device. "You just keep doing what you're doing. Get close to him, listen, and when he tells you where he is going, you tell us." Mia stared at the device. It was a betrayal. It was a trap. "I can't." She shook her head. "Then I hope you have a good lawyer," Ross said, putting the device back in his pocket but leaving the threat hanging in the air. "Think about it. Mia, he is a monster. He will get you killed eventually. We are the only way out." Ross turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Mia standing on the sidewalk, shaking, with the images of Adrian's brutal face burned into her mind. When Mia returned to the suite, the door was unlocked. She pushed it open and found Adrian standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the city skyline. He was wearing a fresh white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal his forearms. He looked powerful. He looked magnificent. And he looked like a lie. Mia slammed the door shut. The sound echoed through the large room like a gunshot. Adrian turned slowly. He saw her face, pale, tear-streaked, and furious, and his expression darkened. "Mia," he said, taking a step toward her. "Where did you go? I told you to stay inside." "Don't tell me what to do," Mia snapped, her voice rising. "Don't you dare tell me what to do. Not after you lied to me about everything." Adrian stopped. He looked at her carefully, assessing the damage. "What happened?" "I met a man named Ross," Mia said, throwing her purse onto the sofa. "He had pictures. Adrian, pictures of you at the docks. Pictures of you with men holding machine guns. He told me who you really are." She walked toward him, her anger giving her a courage she didn't know she possessed. "The Veil Organization. That is what he called it. You aren't a consultant. You aren't in logistics. You are a mob boss." Adrian did not flinch. He did not deny it. He simply stood there, his face an unreadable mask. "Ross is a Fed. He does not understand the nuance of my world." "Nuance?" Mia laughed, a harsh, hysterical sound. "You were shot at last night. That is not nuance. Adrian, that is war. You told me you fixed problems for corporations. You didn't tell me you were the king of Northport." "I am trying to fix it," Adrian said, his voice low and intense. "I inherited this life, Mia. I did not choose it. My father built this empire on blood, yes. But I have been spending every waking moment for the last 5 years trying to legitimize it, trying to cut out the drugs, the violence. I am trying to turn the ship around, and that makes it okay?" Mia shouted. Tears were streaming down her face now. "You dragged me into this. You sat at my front desk, and you flirted with me, and you made me feel special. And all the while you were testing me. Was that it? Was I just an experiment to see if a normal person could stomach your reality?" "No," Adrian said sharply. "I thought you were just a hot traveler." Mia cried, her voice breaking. "I thought you were someone normal, someone temporary. I didn't sign up for this." "Do you think I wanted this for you?" Adrian roared back. The control he always wore like a second skin finally cracked. He paced toward her, his eyes blazing. "I tried to leave, Mia. I tried to check out that first morning. I should have walked away, but I couldn't." He stopped inches from her, his chest heaving. "I stayed because of you." Mia stared at him, her breath hitching. "Don't put that on me." "It is the truth," Adrian said, his voice dropping to a raw whisper. "In my world, everyone looks at me with fear, or greed, or hate. Everyone wants something. Everyone is working an angle." He reached out, but stopped before he touched her, his hand hovering in the air. "But you, that first night, when you stood up to those drunks, you looked at me like I was a man. Just a man. You saw me, not the boss, not the target. Me. I saw a lie," Mia whispered. "You saw the part of me I wish was the whole truth." Adrian said, "I stayed because when I am with you, I can almost believe that I am that man, that I am just a traveler passing through." The confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Mia looked at him, seeing the exhaustion in his eyes, the desperate need that mirrored her own. She hated him for endangering her. She hated him for lying, but God help her, she loved the way he looked at her. "You are selfish," Mia said, tears spilling over. She shoved his chest with both hands. "You are arrogant and selfish." She shoved him again, harder. He didn't move. "You could have gotten me killed," she screamed, hitting his chest with her fists, needing to hurt him, needing to make him feel the terror she felt. Adrian caught her wrists. His grip was firm, stopping her assault instantly. He pulled her hands away from his chest, but didn't let go. He looked down at her. His jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped in his cheek. For a breathless beat, they stood there, pressed chest to chest. Mia could feel the heat radiating off him. She could feel the rapid thud of his heart against her palms. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She looked up at him, her eyes searching his. She saw anger there. She saw guilt. And she saw a hunger that terrified her. "Let me go," she whispered, though she didn't pull away. "I can't," Adrian rasped. "I tried. I can't." He fought a visible battle with himself. A war between the instinct to protect her by pushing her away and the selfish need to keep her close. The need won. Mia gave in first. The anger inside her twisted, morphing into something hot and desperate. She surged up on her toes. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't the romantic kiss under the street lamp. It was a collision. She poured all her fear, all her fury, and all her longing into it. She bit at his lip, demanding he feel this. Adrian made a low, guttural sound and responded with equal force. He released her wrists and wrapped his arms around her, one hand tangling in her hair, the other sliding down to the small of her back to crush her against him. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was oxygen. His mouth moved over hers with desperate tenderness, hungry and searching. He tasted of coffee and despair. Mia's hands roamed over his shoulders, feeling the tension in his muscles. She wanted to crawl inside his skin. She wanted to forget Agent Ross and the photos and the gunshots. She just wanted this fire that burned away the fear. They stumbled backward, their mouths never breaking contact. Adrian walked her toward the bedroom, his movements urgent. Mia felt her back hit the door frame, and a jolt of desire shot through her. He pulled back for a second to look at her, his forehead resting against hers. His eyes were dark pools of emotion. "Mia," he whispered. It sounded like a vow. It sounded like a surrender. His hand slid under the hem of her shirt, his palm hot against her bare skin. Mia gasped, her head falling back as his lips trailed down her jawline to the sensitive spot on her neck. She felt his heartbeat under her palms, rapid and strong. It was the only thing that felt real. But then, the image of the photo Ross had shown her flashed in her mind. Adrian surrounded by men with guns, the threat to her brother, the reality of what loving this man meant. It wasn't just a romance, it was a life sentence. Mia stiffened. A sob caught in her throat. "Stop!" she gasped. She put her hands on his chest and pushed, gently but firmly. "Adrian, stop!" Adrian froze instantly. He pulled back, his breathing ragged, his eyes searching her face. He saw the tears fresh in her eyes, saw the fear returning to cloud the desire. He stepped back immediately, putting a foot of space between them. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to steady his breathing. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. I lost my head. I can't do this," Mia said, wrapping her arms around herself, feeling suddenly cold without his body against hers. "I can't just pretend the last 12 hours didn't happen. I can't pretend you are not who you are." "I know," Adrian said. He looked devastated. "I need to think," Mia said, backing away toward the guest bathroom. I just need time. Please." "Take all the time you need," Adrian said quietly. "I will be in the study. You are safe here. Mia, I promise." Mia fled into the bathroom and locked the door. She sank down onto the cold tile floor, burying her face in her hands. 2 hours later, Mia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She was sitting on the edge of the bathtub, her eyes swollen. She pulled the phone out, expecting a text from the rideshare app or maybe a threatening message from Ross. It was her brother, Leo. Mia's stomach dropped. She answered immediately. "Leo, are you okay?" "Mia?" Leo's voice was shaking. He sounded young, younger than his 19 years. "Mia, where are you?" I am working," Mia lied, her grip on the phone tightening. "What is wrong? Is it Mom?" "No, it is... I was at the grocery store," Leo stammered. "Just picking up the prescription and some milk. 2 guys came up to me in the parking lot." Mia stopped breathing. "What guys? What did they look like?" "Big guys. Tattoos on their necks," Leo said, his voice cracking. "They didn't hurt me, but they cornered me against the car. They knew my name, Mia. They knew about my treatments." "Oh, God," Mia whispered, horror flooding her veins. "They told me to give you a message," Leo said. They said, "Tell your sister to stay away from Adrian Vale. If she keeps warming his bed, she's going to get burned, and you are going to burn with her." The room spun. Mia gripped the sink to keep from falling over. "Mia, who is Adrian Vale?" Leo asked, panic rising in his voice. "Why do these guys know who we are? Mom is freaking out. I'm scared. Listen to me." "Leo," Mia said, forcing her voice to be steady, though she felt like screaming. "Lock the doors. Do not go outside. Do not open the door for anyone except me. Do you understand?" "Mia, what is going on?" "I'm coming to get you," Mia said. "I promise. Just lock the door." She hung up the phone. Her hand was shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She stood up and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was pale, her eyes wild. She had wanted time to think. She had wanted to decide if she could handle Adrian's world, but the world had made the decision for her. Agent Ross was right. She was already in the crosshairs. Her family was being hunted because she had dared to fall for a man with a target on his back. Mia wiped the tears from her face. She looked at her reflection, and the fear began to harden into something else. Something cold, something necessary. Stepping back was no longer an option. She couldn't hide. She couldn't run. The only way out was through. She unlocked the bathroom door and walked out into the suite. Adrian was sitting at the desk, his head in his hands. He looked up when she entered, his eyes full of apology. But Mia didn't look at him with love or with anger. She looked at him with the terrifying clarity of a woman who had nothing left to lose. "They threatened Leo," she said, her voice flat. Adrian stood up slowly, his face going deadly pale. "What?" "Men at the grocery store," Mia said. "They told him to tell me to stay away from you." A dark, lethal shadow passed over Adrian's face. The boss was back. "I will kill them." "No," Mia said. She walked toward him, stopping only when she was close enough to see the gold flecks in his eyes. "You aren't going to kill them. We are going to stop them." She reached into her pocket. For a second, she hesitated, her fingers brushing the card Agent Ross had given her, the one with the number to call if she decided to cooperate. She left it there. "You said you were trying to clean things up," Mia said. "Prove it." Adrian looked at her, confused by her sudden resolve. "Mia, I will get you out of here. I will send you and your family to—" "I am not running," Mia cut him off. "I am done running. You are going to tell me exactly what is happening with this rival crew, and then we are going to finish it." Adrian stared at her, seeing the steel in her spine that he had glimpsed that first night in the lobby. "Mia, it is too dangerous." "I am already in danger. Adrian," she shouted, "my brother is in danger. The only way out is to win. So stop treating me like a civilian and start treating me like a partner." Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Okay," he said. The wind off the harbor was biting, cutting through Mia Carter's coat as if she were wearing nothing but paper. She sat on a damp, peeling bench in a secluded corner of Independence Park, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap that her fingernails dug crescents into her palms. Across from her stood Agent Ross. He looked out of place among the rusted playground equipment and the barren trees, his gray suit crisp, his demeanor maddeningly calm. He looked like a man checking a box on a spreadsheet, not a man dismantling lives. "The meeting is set for tonight," Ross said. His voice was flat, carrying over the sound of the distant traffic. 10 o'clock. Warehouse 4 in the Industrial District. We know Adrian is meeting with the Vargas Syndicate to settle the territory dispute. Mia stared at the ground, watching a dead leaf skitter across the concrete. "Why do you need me?" she asked, her voice hollow. "You know where it is. You know when it is. Just go arrest him." "It is not that simple," Ross said, stepping closer. He loomed over her, blocking out the weak afternoon sun. "We need him on tape. We need him admitting to the shipments, the distribution lines, the murders. If we go in now, he lawyers up and walks in 24 hours. We need concrete evidence to put him away for good. And we need to catch Vargas at the same time." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black device. It was no larger than a matchbook. "You wear this," Ross instructed, holding it out. "It tapes to the underside of your bra. It is undetectable. You go with him. You act like the supportive girlfriend. You get him to talk about the deal in front of Vargas. Once we have the confirmation, my team moves in." Mia looked at the device with nausea rising in her throat. It looked like a beetle, dark and ugly. "And if I refuse," Mia whispered, "then I cannot help you," Ross said with a shrug that terrified her more than any shout could have. "We cannot protect your family without your cooperation. Mia, those men who approached your brother at the grocery store, that was a warning shot. Next time, they won't just talk. If Adrian stays free, your brother is a target. If Adrian goes to prison, the threat dissolves." The image of Leo's terrified face flashed through her mind. She thought of her mother, working her double shifts at the diner, oblivious to the fact that her children were in the crosshairs of a mafia war. Mia felt a tear slide down her cold cheek. She hated Adrian in that moment. She hated him for the lies, for the charm, for the way he had made her feel alive, only to drag her into this nightmare where men threatened teenagers in parking lots. If he really cared about her, he would never have let this happen. She reached out and took the device. It felt heavy in her hand, like a stone. "I will do it," Mia said, her voice trembling. "But you promise me. You promise me Leo and my mom are safe. I have a unit outside your mother's house right now." Ross nodded. "Just get us the tape, Mia. Be his date, be his weakness, and tonight it all ends." The atmosphere in the penthouse suite was suffocating. Adrian was moving through the room with a restless, coiled energy, checking his phone, adjusting his cufflinks, sliding a sleek black pistol into a shoulder holster hidden beneath his jacket. He looked devastatingly handsome in a dark navy suit, the color of a bruised sky, but his face was hard, his eyes distant. He was in war mode. Mia stood by the bedroom door. She was wearing a black dress she had found in the closet, the fabric silk and expensive, beneath the bodice, taped securely against her skin. The wire sat like a burning brand. She felt like she could hear it humming. "You are not coming," Adrian said without looking at her. He picked up a file from the table and snapped it shut. "I have arranged a car to take you to a safe house upstate. My driver is downstairs." "No," Mia said. Adrian turned, his brow furrowing. "Mia, this is not a negotiation. The meeting tonight is volatile. Vargas is unpredictable. I am not bringing you into a slaughterhouse." "You already brought me into it," Mia said, walking further into the room. Her legs felt unsteady, but she kept her chin high. "My brother was threatened. Adrian, my life is already on the line. I am not going to be shipped off to some farmhouse while you and a bunch of criminals decide my fate. I'm trying to protect you," Adrian said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. He walked over to her, his hands twitching as if he wanted to reach out but stopped himself. "If things go wrong tonight, if things go wrong, I want to see it coming," Mia insisted. She looked him in the eye, using every ounce of her remaining strength to hold his gaze. "You said you wanted to clean this up. You said you wanted to change things. I want to see you do it. I refuse to be kept in the dark anymore." Adrian searched her face. He looked for fear, and he found it. But he also saw a stubborn resolve that seemed to surprise him. He didn't know the resolve was born of betrayal, not loyalty. He didn't know she was insisting on coming so she could deliver him to the FBI. He sighed, a long, weary sound, and the tension in his shoulders dropped slightly. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met," he murmured. "Is that a yes?" Mia asked. "If you come, you stay by my side," Adrian commanded, his eyes darkening with worry. "You do not leave my sight. You do not speak unless spoken to, and if I tell you to run, you run. Do you understand?" "I understand," Mia lied. "Okay," Adrian said. He reached out and gently touched her cheek. Mia flinched internally, expecting his touch to burn her, but his hand was cool and gentle. He looked at her with such open, naked affection that her heart twisted in her chest. She was sending him to prison. She was ending his life. "Let us go," Adrian said, dropping his hand. "The sooner this is done, the sooner we can disappear." The warehouse district was a graveyard of industry. Rusted cranes loomed against the night sky like skeletal fingers, and the air smelled of brine and diesel. The black sedan rolled silently over the cracked pavement, coming to a stop in front of a massive corrugated metal building. Adrian got out first, buttoning his jacket. He offered his hand to Mia. She took it. Her hand was trembling violently. Adrian paused. He squeezed her fingers, a firm, grounding pressure. He pulled her slightly closer, his thumb tracing calming circles on the back of her hand. "Breathe," he whispered near her ear. "I have you. I won't let anyone touch you." The irony was a knife in her gut. He was promising to protect her from his enemies, while she was walking him straight into a trap set by hers. They walked toward the warehouse entrance. Two men with thick necks and grim faces frisked Adrian, patting down his suit. They looked at Mia, their eyes lingering. But Adrian stepped between them, his stare lethal. "She is with me," Adrian said, his voice like ice. "Touch her and the deal is off." The men stepped back. They didn't frisk her. Ross had been right. They didn't see her as a threat. They saw her as an ornament. They entered the warehouse. The space was cavernous, lit by hanging work lights that cast long, stark shadows. In the center of the room, surrounded by crates and shipping containers, stood a folding table. A group of men stood on the other side. In the middle was Vargas. He was an older man, sharp-featured and balding, wearing a coat that looked too expensive for the setting. He smiled when he saw Adrian, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Adrian!" Vargas called out, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "You brought a guest. Bold. I like to keep my interests close," Adrian said smoothly. He kept Mia tucked into his side, his arm acting as a barrier between her and the room. They stopped at the table. Mia's heart was hammering so loud she was terrified the microphone taped to her chest would pick it up. "Just get him to talk," Ross had said. "Let us make this quick." "Vargas," Adrian said, his tone businesslike. "You want the eastern docks, I am willing to concede them, provided you cease all operations in the residential districts. No more pushing product near the schools. No more threatening civilians. You have gone soft, Adrian," Vargas sneered. "You sound like a mayor, not a boss." "I am evolving," Adrian said. "Are we agreed on the terms?" Vargas didn't answer immediately. He looked at Adrian, then his gaze slid slowly to Mia. He studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment. "You know," Vargas said, taking a slow step around the table, "I have always admired your caution. Adrian, you are careful, meticulous." "I am busy," Adrian said, his jaw tightening. "Do we have a deal?" "I thought we did," Vargas said. He stopped a few feet from Mia. "But then I got a phone call about an hour ago from a friend of mine, a friend on the federal payroll." Mia's blood froze in her veins. Adrian went still. "What are you talking about? There is a rat in the kitchen. Adrian," Vargas laughed, a dry, cruel sound. "Or should I say, a mouse?" Vargas pointed a finger directly at Mia. "She's wearing a wire," Vargas snarled. The silence that followed was absolute. It lasted only a second, but it felt like a lifetime. Adrian turned his head slowly to look at Mia. His expression was one of total confusion, as if Vargas had spoken in a foreign language. "Mia," Adrian said, "my source says the feds flipped her this morning," Vargas continued, his voice rising in triumph. "Check her. No one touches her," Adrian warned, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. He was looking at Mia's face, seeing the guilt written there in neon letters. "Check her," Vargas screamed at his men. Guns were drawn instantly. The metallic clack-clack-clack of slides racking echoed through the warehouse. "Adrian, Mia started, her voice breaking. Chaos erupted. "Kill them both!" Vargas shouted. Adrian moved before the first shot was fired. He didn't ask questions. He didn't recoil from her. He shoved Mia hard, sending her stumbling behind a stack of wooden crates, just as a bullet sparked against the concrete floor which she had been standing. "Stay down!" Adrian roared. He drew his own weapon, firing 2 rapid shots that sent Vargas's men diving for cover. The warehouse exploded into noise. Gunfire thundered, deafening and relentless. Mia curled into a ball behind the crates, her hands over her ears. She was sobbing. "He saved me," she thought wildly. "He knew I betrayed him, and he still saved me." Suddenly, a hand grabbed her ankle. Mia screamed as she was dragged out from behind her cover. One of Vargas's men, a giant with a scarred face, hauled her to her feet. She thrashed, scratching at his face, but he was too strong. He wrapped a massive arm around her neck, cutting off her air. He jammed the cold barrel of a pistol against her temple. "Drop it!" the man screamed. "Drop it, Vale, or I paint the wall with her." The shooting stopped instantly. Adrian stood 20 feet away, his gun raised, his chest heaving, his eyes locked onto Mia. He saw the gun at her head. He saw the terror in her eyes. "Let her go," Adrian said. His voice was low, deadly, but laced with a terrifying desperation. "Drop the gun," the man yelled, tightening his grip on Mia's throat. With his other hand, he reached down and ripped the neckline of her dress. The fabric tore. The black tape and the small wire were exposed for everyone to see. Adrian stared at it, the proof of her betrayal, the physical evidence that she had sold him out. Mia squeezed her eyes shut, unable to bear the look on his face. "Adrian, I am sorry," she choked out. "They threatened Leo." The captor laughed. "Look at that, the mighty Adrian Vale, brought down by a skirt. Power makes men weak for pretty things, doesn't it?" Adrian looked from the wire to Mia's face. The betrayal was there, raw and painful, but as he looked at the gun pressed to her temple, something else took over. The anger vanished, replaced by a singular, consuming need. He slowly lowered his gun. "Don't!" Mia screamed. "Adrian, don't!" "I'm putting it down," Adrian said, his voice steady. He bent his knees and placed his weapon on the floor. He raised his empty hands, stepping closer. "Take the territory," Adrian said to Vargas, who was watching from the shadows with a smirk. "Take the docks. Take the roats. Take all of it." "You are offering me your empire?" Vargas asked, amused. "I am offering you everything," Adrian said. He never looked away from Mia. "Just let her walk out of here. She's nothing to you. She's just a civilian. Let her go, and I am yours." Mia's heart shattered. He was trading his life for hers. After everything she had done, after she had led him into this trap, he was surrendering his empire to save her. "You are a fool," Vargas spat. "Kill him. Federal agents, drop your weapons." The booming voice of Agent Ross echoed from the catwalks above. Suddenly, the skylights shattered as TAC teams rappelled down on ropes. Flashbangs detonated with blinding white light and concussive force. Boom! The warehouse turned into a disorienting strobe of light and sound. Mia's captor flinched, distracted by the explosion. Mia didn't think. She reacted, remembering the lesson in the hotel gym, the way Adrian had shown her to use her body weight. She drove her elbow backward with all her strength, aiming for the man's floating ribs. She connected. The man grunted, his grip loosening just an inch. Mia dropped her weight, twisting down and away, ducking under his arm just as he fired his gun in panic. The bullet went wide, missing her head by inches. She scrambled across the dirty floor on her hands and knees. "Adrian!" she screamed. The firefight was a blur. Ross's team was advancing, firing controlled bursts. Vargas's men were falling back. Adrian was running toward her, ignoring the bullets flying around him. He was a man possessed, his eyes fixed on her. "Mia!" he shouted, reaching for her. A shot rang out, louder and closer than the others. Adrian jerked mid-stride, his body twisted violently. A spray of red mist erupted from his side, staining his white shirt instantly. He staggered, his leg buckling. "No!" Mia shrieked. She threw herself at him, catching him as he fell. They collapsed together onto the cold concrete behind a forklift. Mia pressed her hands frantically against his side. The blood was hot and slick, pumping through her fingers. "Adrian, look at me!" she sobbed, pressing down hard on the wound. "Look at me!" Adrian groaned, his face pale and beaded with sweat. He looked up at her, his eyes unfocused for a moment before they found hers. He reached up, his bloody hand trembling as he touched her face. You are okay?" he wheezed. "I'm so sorry," Mia cried, her tears mixing with the blood on his shirt. "I'm so sorry. Adrian, I didn't know what to do." "It is okay," Adrian whispered, wincing as pain spasmed through him. "You protected your family. That is what you do." He coughed, a wet sound. "I told you. I would keep you safe." "Don't talk like that," Mia begged. "You are going to be fine." The sounds of gunfire had stopped. The warehouse was filled with the shouts of agents securing the scene. Heavy boots were running toward them. "Mia Carter," Ross's voice barked. "Step away from him! Step away! He needs a doctor," Mia screamed, shielding Adrian with her body. "Help him!" Two agents grabbed Mia by the arms, hauling her backward. "No, let me go!" She fought them, kicking and screaming. "Adrian!" Another team of agents swarmed Adrian. They rolled him onto his stomach, wrenching his arms behind his back to cuff him. Adrian groaned in pain, his head hitting the concrete. Mia was dragged toward the exit, her feet skidding on the floor. She watched as they pulled Adrian up. He was swaying, his shirt soaked in blood, his face gray. But he wasn't looking at the agents. He wasn't looking at Vargas, who was being zip-tied in the corner. He was looking at her. His eyes met hers across the chaotic expanse of the warehouse. There was no anger in them. There was only a profound, heartbreaking sadness. He looked at her like a man who had finally found the one beautiful thing in his life, only to watch it be ripped away. "Adrian!" Mia screamed one last time, her voice tearing her throat. The agents pushed her through the doors and out into the night. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cruisers blinded her. She fell to her knees on the asphalt, gasping for air, feeling as if her heart had been physically ripped from her chest and left on the warehouse floor with the man she had loved and destroyed. 3 weeks had passed since the night the world ended in a warehouse on the docks. Mia Carter sat on the edge of a beige sofa in a small, nondescript apartment on the outskirts of the state. The blinds were drawn tight, cutting off the view of the parking lot below. The air conditioner hummed with a monotonous rattle that drilled into her skull. But it was better than the silence. Silence was where the nightmares lived. Every time Mia closed her eyes, she was back on the cold concrete floor. She smelled the cordite and the copper tang of blood. She felt the warm, sticky slickness of Adrian's wound seeping through her fingers. She saw the agents swarming him, dragging him away as he bled. His eyes locked on hers with that devastating, apologetic despair. She had not seen him since. Her brother, Leo, was asleep in the second bedroom. He had stopped asking questions after the first few days. The fear had aged him. He knew they were hiding. He knew that the men at the grocery store had been real and that his sister had done something desperate to save them. A sharp knock at the door made Mia jump. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a phantom echo of the panic she had lived with for weeks. She walked to the peephole. It was Agent Ross. Mia unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. Ross looked tired. His gray suit was wrinkled, and he carried 2 coffees in a cardboard carrier. He looked less like the intimidating federal agent who had threatened her in the park and more like an overworked bureaucrat trying to close a file. "Morning, Mia," Ross said, handing her a cup. "Black. 2 sugars." I remembered. "What do you want, Ross?" Mia asked, leaving the door open. She did not invite him to sit. "I have news," Ross said, leaning against the doorframe. "About Vale?" Mia's breath hitched. She tightened her grip on the coffee cup, the heat burning her palm. Is he alive?" "He is alive," Ross nodded. "He has recovered from the gunshot wound. It was a through and through lucky." Ross took a sip of his coffee, watching her carefully. "He's talking. Mia, he has given us the distribution routes. He gave us the names of the corrupt union leaders. He gave us Vargas on a silver platter. He's dismantling the Vale organization brick by brick." "Why?" Mia whispered. "He said that was his legacy." "He made a deal," Ross said. "Full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence and entry into the witness security program. He's trading his empire for his freedom, or at least a version of it." Ross paused, his expression softening slightly. "He's going to vanish. Mia, new name, new history, new face, maybe. Once he testifies, Adrian Vale ceases to exist." "And me?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. "You get your clean slate," Ross said. "We have a relocation package ready for you and Leo. A town in the Midwest, quiet, safe. You can go back to school. You can become that interior designer you told me about. And Adrian?" "No contact," Ross said firmly. "That is the rule. For your safety and his. If you go with the program, you cut ties. You never speak to him again. You forget he ever walked into your hotel lobby." Ross finished his coffee and tossed the cup into the trash can by the door. "Think about it. I need an answer by tomorrow morning. It is the only way to be 100% safe. Mia." He left, closing the door with a final, heavy click. Mia stood in the center of the living room, feeling like she was underwater. Safety. That was what she had wanted, wasn't it? A normal life. No guns, no threats, no dark SUVs trailing her car. But as she looked around the beige, safe apartment, she felt a crushing emptiness. The safety Ross offered felt cold. It felt like a life lived in black and white. Adrian had brought color. He had brought danger and lies, yes, but he had also brought a terrifying, beautiful intensity that made her feel seen for the first time in her life. The rain started at midnight. It lashed against the siding of the apartment complex, a familiar rhythm that took Mia back to the Harbor Gate Inn. She couldn't sleep. She sat in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the front door as if she could will it to open, and then, impossibly, it did. There was no knock this time, just the soft scrape of a key in the lock, a key that Agent Ross must have provided. The knob turned. The door swung inward. Mia stood up, the blanket falling to the floor. Adrian stood in the hallway. He looked different. He was wearing simple clothes, jeans and a dark hoodie that looked like they had been bought at a discount store. He had lost weight. His face was gaunt, the sharp angles of his cheekbones more pronounced. There was a healing bruise on his jaw, and he moved stiffly, favoring his left side where the bullet had hit him, but his eyes were the same, dark, intense, and fixed on her with a hunger that stole the air from the room. "Adrian," Mia breathed. She didn't know if she was furious or relieved. She felt everything at once. "Hello, Mia," he said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in days. "How are you here?" Mia asked, her hands shaking. Ross said no contact." "Ross owes me," Adrian said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "I gave him everything he wanted. I told him I wouldn't sign the final papers until I saw you. One last time." "One last time," Mia repeated, the words tasting like ash. "So you came to say goodbye?" "I came to give you a choice," Adrian said. He walked further into the room. The space was small, forcing them into an intimacy Mia wasn't ready for. She could smell him, soap, rain, and that underlying scent of spice that was uniquely him. A choice? Mia let out a harsh laugh, fueled by the weeks of nightmares. "You think I have a choice? Adrian, my life was blown apart because of you. I am hiding in a witness box because of you." "I know," Adrian said quietly. He didn't defend himself. He just took it. "Was it all a game?" Mia demanded, tears pricking her eyes. "From the beginning? The hotel? The tour? Was I just a test subject to see if you could play normal?" Adrian flinched. He took a step closer, invading her space, his presence overwhelming. He looked down at her, and his mask cracked completely. There was no suave traveler left. There was only a man who had lost everything and was terrified of losing the last thing that mattered. "You are testing me," he whispered. The callback hit Mia like a physical blow. He had said those words in the hotel lobby, smirking, arrogant. Now, his voice broke on them. It was a plea, a confession. "I'm testing you?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. "Every day," Adrian said. "Since the moment I saw you behind that desk, you tested my resolve to stay in the life. You tested my belief that I was too far gone to be saved." He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, afraid to touch her. "I'm leaving it, Mia," he said urgently. "All of it. The organization is dead. I burned it down. For you. Because loving you was the only thing that ever made me want to be something other than what my father made me." Mia stared at him, the tears finally spilling over. "You are going into protection. Ross told me. You are disappearing." "I am," Adrian nodded. "I have a new identity waiting. A small town in Wyoming. Nothing but mountains and snow. No ports, no shipments. Just a quiet life." He paused, swallowing hard. "I can go alone. I can walk out that door right now, and you can take Ross's offer and go to the Midwest. You will be safe. You will be happy." He looked at her, his soul in his eyes. "Or you can come with me." Mia's heart stopped. "I won't drag you," Adrian said, his voice fierce. "I did that once, and it almost got you killed. I won't do it again. If you come knowing who I was. You come knowing I am broken. You come knowing that it won't be easy. But you come knowing that I will spend every single day of the rest of my life making it up to you." The room was silent. Save for the hum of the refrigerator and the rain outside, Mia looked at him. She saw the bruises. She saw the guilt. She saw the man who had shielded her with his body when the bullets started flying. She saw the man who had given up an empire just to ensure she walked out of that warehouse alive. Safety without him wasn't safety. It was just existence. Mia took a breath. She closed the distance between them. She placed her hands flat against his chest. She could feel his heart racing under her palms, hammering against his ribs like a bird trying to break free. "Wyoming," she whispered. "Wyoming." Adrian breathed, hope flaring in his eyes like a lit match. "I hate the snow," Mia said, a watery smile touching her lips. "We will buy a fireplace," Adrian said. "A big one." Mia rose on her toes. She didn't hesitate this time. She didn't fight it. She kissed him. It wasn't a kiss of desperation, like the one in the hotel suite. It wasn't a kiss of anger. It was deliberate. It was aching with tenderness. It was a seal on a contract written in invisible ink between them. Adrian let out a shuddering breath against her lips. His arms went around her, pulling her flush against him, holding her as if he were trying to absorb her into his skin. His hands slid down to her waist, his grip firm and possessive, anchoring her to him. The kiss deepened, growing in intensity. Mia wound her arms around his neck, her fingers tangling in his damp hair. She tasted the rain on him. She tasted the promise of a future that wasn't guaranteed, but was finally, truly theirs. They broke apart but didn't let go. They sank down together onto the beige sofa, ignoring the world outside. Adrian pulled her into his lap, burying his face in the crook of her neck, breathing her in. Mia leaned into him, her shoulders finally relaxing for the first time in weeks. She traced the line of the healing cut on his jaw. "I am scared," she admitted softly. Adrian lifted his head. He took her hand, interlacing his fingers with hers, locking them together. "I know," he said. "I am too." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, lingering there. "But I swear to you, Mia, I will protect this. I will protect us. No more lies, no more tests, just us." The sun was just beginning to bleed over the horizon when they left. The highway was a ribbon of gray stretching out into the endless distance. The world was quiet, suspended in that fragile moment between night and day. Mia sat in the passenger seat of a nondescript sedan provided by the marshals. The car smelled of new upholstery and stale coffee. In the back seat, Leo was asleep, a pair of headphones over his ears, a duffel bag by his feet. He had agreed to the adventure with a shrug, trusting his sister more than he feared the unknown. Mia looked out the window. The skyline of the city was fading in the rearview mirror, shrinking with every mile. The Harbor Gate Inn, the rainy streets, the fear, it was all behind them. She looked over at the driver's seat. Adrian was driving with one hand on the wheel, and he looked tired, the bruise on his jaw stark in the morning light. But his expression was peaceful. The tension that had defined him, the constant scanning of the room, the weight of the crown he hadn't wanted, it was gone. He felt her eyes on him and glanced over. Oh, he didn't smirk. He smiled. It was a small, genuine thing that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. He shifted gears, the car humming as they picked up speed toward the mountains. Mia reached out. She placed her hand over his on the gear shift. Adrian turned his hand over immediately, grasping hers, squeezing tight. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The road ahead was long, and they were driving into a life that would require new names and new stories. But as the sun finally broke free of the horizon, flooding the car with golden light, Mia knew they weren't running away. They were driving home. Thank you so much for reading this story. I hope you enjoyed the journey of Mia and Adrian from the rainy hotel lobby to their new beginning. I would love to hear your thoughts on the ending. Please leave a comment down below letting me know where you are listening from and what your favorite part of the story was. Do not forget to subscribe to Mafia romance stories for more intense, emotional, and romantic tales. See you in the next story.